Welcome to the Podcasters Show. This is King of Podcasts here with you. Once again, another great guest that has also found their way into the realm of podcasting, which, you know, we always encourage more. So my guest at this time brings 30 years of multifaceted experience guiding people and brands through transformational growth. With an inventor's innovative vision and a writer's creative flair, she fuels success for those who thrive on the road less traveled. So we are learning more about a new podcast that she is hosting, along with co-host Deborah C. Mortimer, called the About My Book Business podcast. And you can find it on YouTube, and there's so much more you can go and find out in terms of finding it through social media. Already have episodes put in place. And with that said, let's go and bring on board the other co-host of the About My Book Business podcast, Tresa Chambers. Thanks for being on with us.
Hi, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Now, the podcast itself, the idea is that you're featuring guests, authors, editors, marketers, experts, sharing knowledge and experiences. For those who want to be aspiring writers, established authors, or publishing professionals, you provide this program. Now, for those that are looking to go ahead and write a book and do book publishing these days, obviously, you know, we are so consumed with the fact of, you know, how the quality of a book that you could have that can be written that's going to make it the hardcover or paperback, or if it's just going to be enough to be an ebook that could be on a Kindle or a Nook, or you can hear it on Audible, however it is. You know, there's been many years we've had the self-publishing methods, and there are still obviously publishing outlets you can go and get your book published. But for yourself, what was it the onus to go and create this series and talk about the fact of trying to go ahead and publish books, and, you know, the strategy of trying to go and get the books published and, you know, trying to create a career out of it?
So the reason that I wanted to do this podcast is that I have had experiences with a lot of self-published authors over the past decade. And when I encounter them, a lot of times they are frustrated because they're not having great sales on their books, and they aren't really marketing to their audience. And so because of my background, which is in publishing, I have a master's degree in publishing from Pace University in New York, and I've worked in the publishing industry in both the editorial side and on the production and marketing side for various publishers in New York. I understand the industry pretty broadly. And what I saw with people who are saying that they're self-publishing is that they didn't have the fundamentals of the publishing process. And even more so, most people didn't know how to market their books, and they didn't understand what was involved. They didn't want to invest in marketing, and they really didn't have a plan. And I really wanted to help people make an impact, because I do believe that some people need to get their stories out there. Most people. I also believe that there are some people who don't need to publish books. And I want people to understand that just because you know words doesn't mean that you can write a story that people want to read. There is a process, and I am very passionate. I'm an avid reader. I've been reading since I was 3 years old, believe it or not.
Right.
And I love reading, and the quality of the book is the most important thing. I think it is disrespectful to the reader for people to publish books that aren't of high quality. And that is the thing that really got me stirred up to want to put the information out there and have people make a change in the way that publish books, whether it's self-published or traditionally published.
Well, I could tell you, I've caught myself catching a couple of books that were just either entrepreneurial or financial that were just like, oh, but this is just a wash. What were they doing with this book? And, you know, whatever they did with it and what they decided to go and put in. It's about human input. It's about the quality of the book. And also, when you consult yourself about those that want to do book publishing, how much more does it need to be than just an idea for them to get started or to be noticed by a publisher to get started? Should they already have some kind of a manuscript already in place, or at least some kind of a template that entails what the book's going to be before you even get to the process of pitching to a publisher?
Well, if you're talking about taking the traditional publishing route, then you would want to work with an agent. Publishers don't accept submissions directly from writers, the big publishers. You have to go through an agent. Right. And so if you're going through an agent, then you have to have a clear idea about what it is that you want to write. And the agent will help with a framework if they believe that it's a story worth pitching to a traditional publisher. But that takes work. And so you have to understand that there is an investment to be made, even with the agent, even though the agent may receive the bulk of their payment from the publisher once they've sold your book in. But you got to develop the idea. You've got to develop the framework. You have to really be clear about what it is that you want to say. You have to have clarity around your voice, and you have to have a beginning, middle, and end. You have to have a really good story. Now, if you're self-publishing,
you were just reading my mind about self-publishing. So go ahead.
If you're self-publishing, you have to have all those things too. And then you have to understand the production aspects of writing and publishing a book. And so many people, of course, Amazon is available out there. And so it's so easy to say, okay, I'm just going to put my book up on Amazon. Well, the cover design is really important, whether you're traditionally publishing or self-publishing. You can't just do clip art and put some images on a cover and just say, okay, I have a book cover now. There's design that's involved in the book cover. So you need to spend the time or spend the money to make sure that your book cover is right. There is a standard formatting for books that is about making it readable for your readers. So you have to factor that in. And then you have to plan how you're going to engage on Amazon, because people get frustrated with Amazon because they aren't selling. But imagine it really is like dropping, putting like a drop of water into the ocean. I'm a member of the Association of Book Producers, and we had a speaker on recently who shared that before Amazon, there were maybe a few 100,000 books published every year. And now with Amazon in 2023, there were 20 million books published. How do you think you're going to be found among 20 million books if you just put it on the shelf and wait for somebody to come and find it? That's just not going to happen. So you got to have a plan. And that's what I'm here to help people with.
Not only do you have the podcast that you've been providing, but also, you've made it where you want to go also have in-person engagement. One of the other things that you also offer that you're hosting is the Inkpreneurs Summit. INK, but entrepreneur, but just take the ENT out, put INK. And you're hosting that at the Doubletree Hotel, Winston-Salem University, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, November 1st and the 2nd. So we're about 90 days out as I record this with Tresa. So that also is very important because, giving that chance to go ahead and not just the podcast, we have that weekly platform for people to go ahead and tune in and learn from a lot of experts. You're giving a whole full gamut here by who you're going to bring on board, from authors, producers, industry experts, consulting moguls, and others. So is this the first of its kind, or have you already done this kind of event before? Talk to me about the Inkpreneurs Summit.
So this is the first Inkpreneurs Summit to take place, and I'm doing that in collaboration with a great writer who does fantasy writing, and she's also really brilliant business mind. And so we're working together on launching the Inkpreneurs Summit because we understand that we need to build community. We want to have more diverse and inclusive voices, which is also a factor in us establishing the podcast About My Book Business. It's really about having diverse voices represented and included. And so with Inkpreneurs Summit, we also understand that there are different genres of literature, and there's such a broad range of talent that can come together and complement and support each other as we build out books and other ancillary products, I would say, related to publishing.
to bring up a diversity inclusion. And one of those things is that obviously we're getting a lot of books that are being put out there. I mean, listen, if I look at Audible, and I remember having Audible for several years as a subscriber, and, it's like there's for some people, I feel like they're writing books that are just saying, well, this is just a trend. This is like what people will go and pick up or listen to if they do. But what do you say about those people that will decide to go that route of creating books that might play to that audience, to an audience that wants to go ahead and read more about diversity and inclusion, but they might be more performative in aspect than they actually are really active and being, really offering real content, something that's of real value when you read the book, and you don't feel like you're just reading something that somebody just to put it together just because the right words were put together.
Yeah. Well, this is especially an issue and concern with regard to children's books. And that's where my great co-host, Deborah C. Mortimer, comes in. She's a children's book author. But what we're talking about is having the perspectives represented by the people whose voices we're trying to represent and whose stories we're trying to tell. And so it's really important to have a diversity of voices. People of color are not trending. We're here. We've been here. And so it's great that we have an opportunity to elevate our voices and elevate our story and offer different perspectives. Also, to demonstrate that there is a universality of experiences that we have, but they can be shared uniquely through our individual stories. And no one can represent your story but you. No one can represent my story, my background, my history but me. And so it's really important to bring all of those voices, elevate all of those voices through storytelling, through books. And, in an industry, unfortunately, where the great majority of people in publishing remain white women, actually, it's important to grow that network and build community. We don't exclude white women in our work at all. We just bring the other voices that maybe you need to do a little bit more investigation to reach out and find them, to bring them into the community. And that's what we intend to do, elevate those voices and tell the wonderful, rich stories that we have.
So take me into some of the guests that you have curated to bring on board to the About My Book Business podcast, to what you and Deborah have put together in terms of what you talk about amongst each other and the guests you bring on, because obviously it's a very wide gamut of who you bring on, from graphic artists to publishers themselves to other people within the industry itself. Talk to me about that.
Sure. So during the first season, we really just leaned into our closest network because the first season you're kind of trying things out and seeing what's possible. But we had a notion that we wanted to have folks on who could inform about all the steps in the process of publishing, from the editorial to design to production to sales and marketing. And so those were the folks that we really focused on. We had a great illustrator on who has done work for large corporations and who also loves to do graphic novels. We had a couple of children's book authors on, and that was really great. Some who do series and some who've done one-offs. And we love to talk about what the difference is and what the opportunities are for people to grow their business as an author who has created a series versus a one-off book. We had an author on who is from the LGBTQ community. And so that was something that we want to introduce too, in terms of true inclusion, that we are represented across the spectrum. And we had a publisher from Canada come on and talk about her authors that she works with who are from diverse backgrounds and what her process is. She's a hybrid publisher. So educating people about the different types of publishing, what the process is, and how they can think about having a true business and brand is what our intention was. And I'm really looking forward to our second season, which we're going to start recording soon. And we have some great accomplished authors who have a broader reach, who have bigger brand and touch points as well. So really excited to have those folks along too, to talk about how you level up as a published author and really grow, really build a business around your book.
What's fascinating to me too is that obviously, a video-based podcast, but you initiated from LinkedIn Live, and you obviously have quite a following on LinkedIn to bring that across and to, again, really, get a lot of engagement from followers there. So it would be much more of an industry business style podcast. So, how much engagement does that entail? Do you really pull people that you have that are also following you on LinkedIn, or that you've connected with a lot of networking? Is that really what encompasses the guests that you bring on board, and why you feel like they would be best to be on the program, and who would be on the program in the future?
So we started out on LinkedIn, and I'll tell you, honestly, it was an experiment because that was a platform. They offered that opportunity and that business focus. And so it was a great way to try it out and see what kind of traction we could get. And because of our networks on LinkedIn, we thought that would be a great place to start, anticipating that we would really build it out from there. I think that when you're talking about having a business-focused platform, it's really important to have multiple touch points and frankly, a clear strategy for going forward. That's the thing I talk about all the time as a marketer, is that you got to have a strategy and a plan. And for us, we're building our strategy and plan to really scale up our followers on YouTube right now, as well as we're going to go onto a podcasting platform so that we can have broad distribution across all the podcatchers, iTunes and Spotify and all the rest. So that's something that we're building, but we wanted to just kind of test it out, and also to see if we really wanted to do it, right? Because everybody does have a podcast these days. And so it's the question of, is this the best way to bring value? Is this the best way to deliver content? And did we really have the energy and enthusiasm for it? Because a lot of times, you see people start things and they don't necessarily follow through, or you learn a lot and you find that, hey, maybe this isn't the right thing. But with the platform that we have using LinkedIn, we're able to connect with all the thousands of people that we're already linked to try to identify those speakers that we think could bring value, and really start to begin building a community around the About My Book Business podcast and that community, and then see what else we can do to really bring value to the guests on the show.
Also fascinating that you decided to live stream it off the bat. So, you definitely are, it's very ambitious. It's one of those things where, listen, for all the programming I ever do, it goes back to 2012, my own independent stuff. And then going back even farther than that, it was one of those things where, okay, live is one thing where, if I'm just doing it by voice, I could do this like a radio show, but doing it live, and these days, live streaming, it's ambitious, but it's like, you see people that do it, but they feel like they always do it after they've gone and have had a run at doing, particular shows and working their way up to that. But you went ahead and, face the fear, you're going to go and live stream it on LinkedIn. Talk about the fact that you chose to do it that way instead of recording it, that you needed to feel the feel of live. Talk to me about that aspect.
Well, I did feel like I wanted to just kind of jump in the deep end, because I thought that that's where you really get a sense of how the platform works, and, just kind of understanding what that process can be. I also think that you kind of miss something when you record and you repackage. There is something, although we're planning to do that for the second season, there are some things that I thought could be valuable in having just kind of like a live streaming conversation, surprises, things like that could really be great. I think that doing the package recording is going to be really valuable as well. And years ago, I had another podcast and I recorded it. And I definitely thought that that was a great strategy because you do get to actually, formulate the show like you want it. But I think that doing the streaming was a great experiment and things that we really needed, Deborah and I needed to see how we vibe together in conversation and kind of driving the show. And I think that's what we found out is how we could work together, that we wanted to work together and continue that, and that we wanted to have guests that could be feeling really good about just being in the moment in conversation and having that sense that, wherever you are in the moment, people want to see it. People want to connect in that way. And so that was really valuable.
I mean, it's not necessarily where you're going to get the bulk of the audience is going to be watching on the live stream because of the timing and all those kind of logistics. Obviously, we're in a society where we'll find the on demand that they do that. So that's okay. But I think it's something to be said about the presentation that you wanted to go ahead and just give yourself that live streaming. You're on your toes. You want to be able to go and say, okay, we're going to go right through this and we're going to keep this engaging and entertaining because we're doing it live. We're doing it in real time. You can feel there's a much more, and not even just so much enthusiasm, but the energy level is up because you have to go and put it on. You got to put on a show and put out a front. Now, I also noticed that you've done very guest-intensive interviews, but obviously there's a lot that you and Deborah could also, obviously, would be able to contribute. I know you do that quite a bit in these interviews, but talk about the fact of how you want to be able to pair out the amount of time both of you have to be able to inject your own commentary with the guests and amongst yourselves. And have you ever looked at the idea in the new season where it could just be both of you, going back and forth and giving some really great dialogue?
So we actually did do that during the first season. Well, because as I said, Deborah's a children's book author and she's also a trademark attorney. And so she's got great insights for intellectual property, which is valuable information for authors. And so we did 2 episodes, one where I was interviewing her about trademarking your assets and how the children's book industry, what's going on in the children's book industry and what the value is there. And then her focus on design and working with illustrators and that whole process. And then in turn, we did a show where she interviewed me about marketing and all of the ideas that I have about the ways that people need to develop better marketing plans and giving some tips actually on what approach to take. And my particular approach has always been primarily focused on business to business. So selling many of your books to one customer as opposed to selling them one at a time. And there are different strategies to do that. And so I really focus on that. And so we had that great conversation. So that was a part of the show. We'll continue in the second season to offer our tips and insight in a more strategic way, I think more structured, so that we really do offer those particular outtakes based on the experience and skills that we bring to the table.
I want to go pivot a little bit about what you're doing right now yourself, because obviously just to get into the mind of you doing the podcast along with Deborah, but about yourself, you run 10th Muse Enterprises. If you want to go and look at the website, TNTHMUSE Enterprises.com. And you can find information about the podcast, the Inkpreneurs Summit. And one of the things that you're doing as well is, very philanthropic, where you now have a line of culturally inclusive greeting cards and stationery featuring designs from Black and brown artists called Mawu Greetings, MAWU Greetings. And I saw there's a GoFundMe page that's been put in place to raise money towards empowering artists with these greetings. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So the 10th Muse is all about empowering the creative community. And with that vision in mind, I want to support authors, artists, and other creative entrepreneurs through various ventures. So the About My Book business obviously focuses a lot on the authors, and I also do coaching and consulting with developing their plans, but also coaching through the book development process. And then, of course, Entrepreneurs is that community building. And then with Malu, I really wanted to reach back to the visual artists in particular to help them elevate their visibility and brand. And actually, over the years, I have both in my corporate job and in as a consultant, I've been a bridge between business and creative people. And I love being in that space. And I see a lot of opportunity where a lot of artists of color are still underrepresented in a lot of spaces and are losing out, frankly, on economic opportunities. So based on my experience, what I've seen and where I see opportunity, I wanted to increase the access that these creatives have to customers who could invest greater in them. The greeting cards and stationery business is really focused on introducing those creatives to markets that they haven't been accessing. And the cards are really an entry point, high quality design, centered on cultural diversity, being more inclusive, and then having those products be put in front of businesses and member-based organizations that will then see the value, make the products collectible, and then create opportunities for those artists to actually be commissioned for greater opportunities. So it's a win for everyone. And that's what I'm loving about it. And I'm really excited. I'm working with an organization now that's going to be having one of my artists work specifically on some custom designs. See, we're already opening up opportunities that the artists didn't have before. And that's really what I'm excited about doing.
So one of the things I want to make mention of for sure is when you have this approach of, well, I'll put it like this. So full-time, I do a lot of podcasting work for the cannabis industry, cannabis, psychedelics, and we talk so much about diversity, equity, inclusion, social equity, such an important point in every new market that comes into play. And one of the things I always bring up when those kind of interviews is the fact that, it's always talking about the fact that you want to lay groundwork for the next generation of the same like-minded individuals to also be able to go and continue to further the cause. So one of the things I always talk about as well is, it's like when it comes to the business world, it's like if you have a seat at the table, you need to make sure you replace yourself with someone else like-minded from where you came from, your background, to take your place when you go. So what about that part in terms of the new publishers, the people that are coming in? Obviously, you're coming in to go ahead and, bring a gateway for those that want to be able to publish books in the same like mind that we have today. And to continue to further that we need new people to come into the pipeline. Talk to me about the importance of that.
Oh, it's absolutely critical because otherwise, you really aren't building a legacy. You're just kind of being opportunistic and being present in the moment. And so having those thoughts about building a legacy and creating a real pathway for the next generation is crucial. And even in that regard, we're working with a nonprofit organization that is in Alabama that is serving youth creatives. And so they're going to be working with us even for Malu Greetings on our calendars for 2025. That creates an opportunity for them to be mentored by someone who's extremely talented in the industry, for them to see how they can actually profit from their talent. And that's something that's truly critical because for so many creative people, their ambition is squashed pretty early. And so just seeing the examples and the opportunities to be able to actually be successful and show that you can create art and that's something that you can actually make a living with is going to feed into keeping the pipeline growing because people aren't just going to leave their art and go and work at a job that they don't really love and really squash and suppress their creative side. They're going to allow it to flourish. And that's going to encourage others to do the same because they're a model for the next generation of whoever's watching them. And somebody's always watching.
Tresa, this has really been great. I really appreciate you taking time out to go and join us here on Podcasters Row. And again, the show is about my book business. You can go and find it on LinkedIn Live initially. Go ahead and just look for Tresa Chambers. You can find her on LinkedIn and then follow her. But then also, if you need to go and find the replays, you can find them on YouTube, youtube.com at About My Book Business, all one word. And also, real quickly, again, 10th Muse Enterprises, TENTHMUSE, enterprises.com. And if you want, just take 30 seconds real quickly just to go and make mention of anything else you want to make mention of in terms of the podcast or what you're working on.
So you know, we are going to be starting up the new season, kicking off in September of About My Book Business. So keep an eye out for that. Follow us for sure. Maluk Readings will be launching next month. And so keep an eye out as well for the designs and reach out if you are an artist who's interested in contributing your designs. And certainly reach out if you're a business interested in getting those cards distributed. Our first line is going to be for the winter holiday season. That includes Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and New Year's. So those are the things that we're focusing on, getting that first design, that line of designs out. And we look forward to serving the community as much as we can. And any other ideas and collaborations, we are so open to them. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
And also, if you get to go meet Tresa, go meet her at the Inkpreneur Summit, again, November 1st and 2nd. And the website for that is inkpreneursummit.com. INK, think entrepreneur, take out the ENT, add ink, and then summit.com, all one word. November 1st and 2nd, Winston-Salem University's DoubleTree Hotel, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So thank you. And I hope, a lot of people are going to get to meet you and get to find you for the program. And best of luck on the second season.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And thank you, listeners, for listening in. We'll talk to you next time.